Nathalie, welcome to Living Light. I'm so excited about our conversation today. It's long overdue, many, I would imagine maybe over a year in the making. We've probably been talking about this. And since then, I've had so many people ask me about peptides and bioregulators. To my clients, they message me and they're like, what peptide should I be on? Because they read about it or hear about it. And my answer to them is, I don't know, but I know who I would ask. And I also know that what peptides do I need is probably not the first question that we should be asking. And, we recently had a chance to connect at the Biohacker Summit, the Longevity Summit in Toronto, and I had a chance to hear you speak. And I remember standing there listening to you share, and there were so many values that aligned. And I would imagine so. And so I'm really honored and thrilled that you uh, are able to have this conversation and this dialogue for our audience who are mainly middle-aged men and women who
Hmm.
want to be healthy, right? Or get healthy and then on the back of that, take their health to a whole new level. And there's a few things that come up over and over these days. It seems like they're really trending. One is peptides. I know another one is like cold plunging. Okay.
Ish. Yeah.
which uh which I did a couple of plunges this morning. So I love and hate it, which
Yeah.
uh which is interesting thing because most things related to health I enjoy, but I still haven't I've mastered the cold plunge in the sense that I don't lose my cool, so to speak, no pun intended. But I still don't look forward to it. So that's another thing that's taken the world by storm. Ketosis is another one, and carnivore. I think those are the things that are like trending like crazy right now. And
Yeah.
so we're going to go into peptides. First of all, I'd love to know if you can give me just a little bit of background about when you first heard the word peptide, what it meant to you, and like what really lit that spark in you to go down this rabbit hole for so many years.
Thank you, Sachin. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And like you said, we've been kind of moving around in the same circles for a while now. So it took us a little while to connect the dots, but here we are, which I'm really excited about. So about 15 years ago, I went back to school and became a holistic nutritionist. And I, really got into this whole biohacking space back pretty early in the game, mostly because the as we both know, nutrition is a critical pillar of optimizing health and longevity, but it's not the only thing, right? So I, at the time, decided, okay, I'm going to keep moving in this space and acquire more tools, as it were. And without going into too much detail, probably 5 years in, well, maybe even a little longer than 5 years in, I was at a conference. It was maybe one of my first two conferences I ever went to. Yeah, maybe. No, probably my first four. Um, and there was, and I sat myself down because I needed to take a load off my feet. And there was a guy talking on stage. And I wasn't paying that much attention until all of a sudden he started talking about, I'm standing here and I have a bit of a tan. Well, I have a lot of a tan and I haven't spent any time in the sun. And the way I did this is I used this. And then 2 minutes later, he's talking about another this that heals magically. It sounded like magic, right? Could heal wounds and musculoskeletal injuries and the gut. And then 3 minutes after that, he's talking about another thing that helps to regulate circadian rhythm and regulate melatonin and elongate telomeres. And now I'm like really paying attention. Going, what is this guy talking about? Like, is it a supplement? Is it a gizmo? Like, what is it? And it turns out that what he was talking about were peptides and bioregulators, which are essentially small proteins. And they are, for the most part, they're small proteins that are existing in our bodies, sometimes as part of a bigger protein and other times just as themselves. And so when you hear about something like this, you kind of go, well, you lean over and you tap the guy's shoulder in front of you and go, is this guy for real? Like, and the guy who was in front of me turned around and said, oh, honey, this is going to revolutionize medicine. You
Hmm.
just watch. And sure enough, it's definitely certainly in the functional and integrative alternative medical space, it's been making big waves in the biohacking world of people who just want to grab the bull by the horns. it's making even bigger waves. And it's an interesting space that we're in, because in this world of people who really want to take charge of their health, very often they'll learn about new things. They don't want to, once they get enough information, they're like, okay, well, I don't care if it's approved or not. I'm going in, which is both good and bad, right? And we'll talk about a little bit about that. But basically that's what it was, that one talk. And I thought, maybe I don't need this right now. And then there was a podcast, and then there was another podcast. And then I was like, okay, this is big. And so I started a Facebook community, and it just took off. And a year later, I started a podcast of my own to basically get people to talk to me who knew more about the topic than I did, which is how I started kind of on this education. And the rest
It's a
is
great
this.
way to learn, by the way.
Right? Like, don't we learn so much through a podcast? It's amazing. And so, and I did a couple courses, and it's been a wild and crazy ride. And I think that for all the people who are listening, who are like, okay, amazing. Like what you just said, people will come to me and say, well, one of two things. They'll be, what peptide should I be using? Or what's the peptide for? Fill in the blank. And
Mhm.
as you said so wisely at the beginning, that's often not the question we need to be starting with. So I'm going to let you kind of decide where we go from there. But basically that's kind of, I think we're in a world that is not very well regulated right now. And so there's some beautiful things going on. And then there's some stuff that people really need to be look out for.
Yeah, and I probably like you, I don't want to make any assumptions, but certainly I can speak for myself that I don't sometimes care if something's regulated or not, because I want to be on the leading edge of it, right? And sometimes experiment with skepticism and caution. Of course, we don't want to be indiscriminatory. And so I tend to push the envelope a little bit myself and try things out before I introduce them to my clients. So I'm curious, through this process, you've probably used peptides and bioregulators yourself. What are some of the things that you've noticed that they've made a difference in, if you're open to sharing?
Sure. Peptides and bioregulators are inherently different. They're different in how they work, and they're different in why you would use them. So maybe what I'll do is I'll go into that first and
Sure.
make the distinction between the two of them, and then it'll be easier for me to kind of explain how I've used them both. So on the peptide front, you're talking about a small protein that is 50 amino acids or less. And for those people who, you've all heard about a peptide called insulin. Insulin is a peptide. It's naturally produced in the body. In some people, their body stop producing it, so they have to supplement it. And it's done subcutaneously, usually, or with a pump, by injection. And that's because as a small protein, if we take it by mouth, for the most part, it will get digested as a protein in the gut. Now, there's
Mm.
exceptions to that, what we can talk about, but those are the peptides. And for the most part, peptides are signaling molecules. So that means that they're going to interact with receptors on cells, or, in different areas of the body, and initiate chemical cascades from the outside of the cell. And the things that they can do are vary from, like, insulin regulating how sugar is taken up into cells, to, in the case of some peptides, helping to manage the immune response. In other cases, it might help to facilitate wound healing or healing of musculoskeletal issues. So there's a variety of different, there's other peptides that are actually originate in mitochondria that can help to support mitochondrial functioning. There's antimicrobial peptides. There's the infamous peptide that gave that guy a tan, which actually bodybuilders has been using for a really long time, right? Called Melanotan, and Melanotan helps with tanning. Now, Melanotan does a lot of other things. And this is the thing about peptides that I think is the conundrum, and the reason why so many of them are still not approved as drugs. So number one, they can't be approved as drugs because as they exist right now, they're they're natural biological compounds, so you can't patent them. So the pharma company is not going to spend a bajillion dollars researching something it can't patent
Mm.
and make money on. The other thing that I think that's a complicating factor with peptides is that for the most part, they're very pleiotropic. And what I mean by that, pleiotropic is a big word that really means that they do many different things. And for example, BPC 157, which is something that your audience may have heard about, and the way to keep the letters in order is body protective compound, BPC. If you remember body protective compound, that's what BPC stands for. You'll never call it CBP or BCP, all the other collections of letters I've heard about. So BPC 157, incredibly powerful for healing the GI tract, from the mouth to the anus and everything in between. Incredibly powerful for wound healing, has applications for treating burns, has applications for protecting the brain, the liver, the heart, the kidney, right? Body protective compound, it's organoprotective, very powerful for helping to heal tendons, ligaments, muscles, and bones. So you can see, and that there's more. It's anti-inflammatory, it's analgesic. It can help. It even is being researched for people who have addictions to help to relieve addiction. So it's so vast because there are receptors for BPC 157 all over the body. One of the reasons why I think that pharmaceutical companies struggle with it is that the way that they like to work is they like to create a compound and says, this works for this.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want this to work for this and then do all the other things. Now, it just so happens that many of the drugs that we take have side effects, but side effects are different than affecting all these different systems.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that's one of the obstacles to peptides becoming adopted currently by pharma companies. So that's the peptide side. On the bioregulator side, we now have it's almost like a cousin. Well, it's not even a cousin. It's a sibling to peptides. But whereas peptides are 50 amino acids or fewer, the bioregulator peptide is only 2 to 4 amino acids long. So amino acids, just to back up a minute, are the building blocks of protein. And 2 to 4 amino acids is the most minuscule compound you can imagine. What's really neat about these minuscule little proteins is that because of what they are and their size and their charge and many other factors, they not only can get into the cell, they can actually get into the nucleus of the cell. And there they directly affect the expression of your DNA. And this is why they are often referred to as epigenetic switches. So basically, an epigenetic switch is anything that affects how your DNA expresses itself. We often talk about genes being turned on and off. That's because of epigenetics. It could be from inside the body, like stress, different things produced in the body can affect the way genes express. And also your environment, things that you can control and things that you can't control is also very often going to affect gene expression. But there aren't very many things that actually will bind to the DNA and affect the way that it produces proteins. And those bioregulators can do that. And
Hmm.
so for that reason, they're incredibly powerful. But also the way that they work is that their MO, as it were, is to restore homeostasis to the system. So bioregulators are looking to reestablish balance in whatever tissue, gland, or organ they affect. And this is why the bioregulator, to me, I often look at it as a much safer option across the board than peptides, which is not to say that peptides are inherently dangerous, but there's a lot more that's unknown about the peptides. The bioregulators were discovered in Russia about over 30 years ago by a man by the name of Professor Vladimir Kavinson. And he was tasked by the Russian military at that time to figure out a way to restore health and vitality to cosmonauts coming back from space and submarine operators coming back from nuclear submarine missions where they were coming back home a hot mess, right? They were exposed to radiation and all that stuff. So he was a young guy. He was a young doctor in the army, and he was basically given carte blanche. He was given a huge team of people to work with. He was given access to anything that he needed. In those days, they could do that. And off he went. And he
Hmm.
discovered these small little proteins that are naturally occurring in the human body, but also are naturally occurring in essentially every single life form that he looked at. And in science, we know that when researchers find something that is preserved across all life forms, we should be paying attention to that, because if Mother Nature thinks it's that important, then it probably is. Um,
Yeah.
right. And
It
so,
reminds me of DMT. DMT is a molecule found in all living things.
correct. And so therefore it must be awfully important. So with the bioregulators, we're talking about decades of research, and he started obviously with small little organisms and moved on to computer generated models and moved into animal studies and then eventually studied them in humans.
Hmm.
And the cool thing in those days, or cool or not cool, whatever we want to call it, you didn't need, they had factories filled with people in Siberia that were willing, or I don't know if they were willing, but they were presented as people who would be test subjects for his experiments. And the good news is that the people who got the bioregulators got they got the golden nugget.
Hmm.
Right? So there's a couple of very um, of studies that are touted most often that Professor Cavinson did. One of them is the old people study, and the other one is the elderly people study, which I find, I kind of take offense, because the old people study are 65 to 75-year-olds. And I'm like, well, that's kind of lowering the bar on old, if you ask me. Having said that, it was a 12-year study, and he had his test subjects who were given bioregulators, and he had his control group who were given injections of polyvitamins. So everybody got an injection of something. He was using a form of bioregulators that is different than what we can get our hands on today. And I think that's important to say, because it's he was using, for the pineal gland bioregulator, which is one of the first study that he did was just with pineal gland bioregulator. He used a form called epithalamin. Epithalamin is an actual extract from the pineal gland of young animals, and it's prepared as an intramuscular injection. And what's also really interesting is that these people were administered epithalamin injections, as well as the controls given the polyvitamin injections, for just 2 years. And he, of course, in humans, we live too long, so you can't see how longer people are going to live, but you can look at how fast are people going to die. And
Hmm.
he was able to show that after 6 years, the people who got the pineal gland bioregulator injections had a 30% lower death rate than the control group. And after 12 years, they had almost half, or maybe they were at 44%. I get the numbers mixed up sometimes. We can put the real numbers in the show notes if you want. I can go look them up, but it was about 40% lower mortality, all cause, than
Wow.
the control. So that's interesting, right? Now we get to the elderly people study, and now we've got 75 to 85-year-olds, and he didn't expect those people to live 12 years. So he did a 6-year study, but he had 3 different groups. He had his group who were getting the polyvitamins. Group 2 was getting just epithalamin, which is the pineal gland bioregulator. Group 3 was getting epithalamin, the pineal gland bioregulator, along with thymolin, which is the thymus gland bioregulator. And the people who got the immune bioregulator with the pineal gland bioregulator had half the mortality rate of the control group, who had an 88% mortality rate by the end of the 6 years. And the guys in the middle who only got epithalamin had about a 30 or 40% mortality rate. So both groups of pineal who got the bioregulators won the lottery here. And what was really interesting is when you look at the data, it's not just that they didn't die, but they were actually healthier. They had a better immune system, their bone density was better, they had a better sense of well-being, they slept better. And if you want, I can go into some of the details of what the pineal gland bioregulator and the thymus bioregulator are doing that can maybe help to people to understand, well, why would they not die?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so very quickly, basically the thymus gland bioregulator is going to modulate. It's going to bring the thymus, it's going to bring immune system into balance. And we all know that as we age, what takes us out most often is, well, most of the time it's an immune system that's not performing up to snuff. It's underperforming, but sometimes even an overperforming immune system is going to turn on us and cause autoimmune issues. So we want our immune system to be balanced, and that thymus gland bioregulator does exactly that. The pineal gland bioregulator affects the pineal gland, and what the pineal gland controls is your circadian rhythm. So it can help with improving sleep and sleep quality. It helps to normalize melatonin production. And we know that melatonin is really important for sleep, but it's also our most powerful antioxidant in the body. And so melatonin regulation is a massive piece of the puzzle when we're trying to help people to stay healthy. It also, the pineal gland has this kind of overall endocrine balancing role. So it's kind of like the master conductor. And it activates an enzyme called telomerase. And telomerase is the enzyme that helps to restore and maintain the telomeres, which are those ends on the end of our DNA that make sure that our DNA can keep replicating. As our telomeres get super short, is as chronic disease develops, or maybe it's the other way around. I don't know that anybody's figured out where the chicken or the egg is on this, but definitely very short telomeres are associated with more illness. And in that sense, the pineal gland bioregulator can help with to restore and maintain telomere length. Another feature of the pineal gland bioregulator is it seems to have really powerful immune benefits. There are some animal studies that Cavinson did that showed that it was even anti-tumor for animals that were prone to developing tumors. So those two alone are, I think, are incredibly powerful. And because they're available in a capsule form as an extract from animal tissue, they are actually categorized as nutritional supplements. So they're completely above board, they're completely legal. You can actually buy them without jumping through hoops and going on crazy websites in the dark web. And because they restore balance, in my mind, they're a really nice way to help the body to maintain balance. They work really well with conventional medications. They work well with supplements. If you take it and you don't need it, I mean, most of us over the age of 50, the way my analogy for bioregulators is, imagine that you are driving a car and the tread on those tires wears down over time. And what the bioregulator is doing is just restoring the tread on the tires. It'll never get it back to its brand new fuzzy state when it's got the little hairs on it, but
Hmm.
it will make sure that that tread remains functional so that your thyroid, your adrenals, your stomach, your lungs, your kidneys, your liver start to come, have the potential to regenerate at a cellular level to keep better function.
It's so fascinating. I have a ton of questions, but one that comes up is more of an observation, and it's that Mother Nature kept it so simple, right? That these 2 to 3 amino acids kind of strung together, don't activate the immune system because they're too short to.
Yeah.
So there's less likelihood the body's going to reject or react to it, right? And have an immune response to it. And then it's so simple, yet it does so many sophisticated things. And I just love what Da Vinci said, that the ultimate sophistication is simplicity.
Yeah.
And so, like, I can't think of a better example than this, where where Mother Nature again just kind of shows us how simple things can be. Uh, the other question I had, you mentioned obviously insulin is a peptide, and you could take too much insulin and you'd be dead.
Hmm.
So it begs the question, like, can you take too many peptides? Like, can they cause a problem for people? Certainly insulin can, because it is one, but is there a possibility of overdose? Should we be dosing by size, by symptoms? Like, how do you
Yeah.
dose somebody the right amount?
So with the bioregulators, it's pretty hard to overdose, because they're just flipping that switch. For the most part, what I've seen is people might it's wasteful, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
one other thing I want to say about the bioregulators is they're available as synthetic compounds, and they're also available as oral bioregulators, the natural form. And then there's that injectable natural form but you can only get that in Russia. So we're going to move those aside for now. The injectable bioregulators are synthetic. They're made in labs, and they like the orals, for the most, you kind of can't overdo it. I haven't seen that yet. I've yet to
Mhm.
see it. When you look at peptides like BPC 157 or Thymosin Alpha-1, like we're now getting more into the research chemical world. There's not, in all the studies I've read, there's no lethal dose. Having said that, you can overstimulate a pathway, right? So, for example, with the thymosin alpha-1, that really kind of acts to, although it has immune modulation properties, it does really preferentially boost the innate immune system. That can backfire if you've got the wrong person. If somebody's innate immune system is already overfiring and you give them more, that can throw them into a flare of some kind, right? So, whereas thymosin alpha-1 does have applications for people with autoimmune issues, it actually, there's a really interesting study that looked at thymosin alpha-1, and we're going to stay away from the politics of vaccines for a minute, but they looked at elderly populations. So the elderly population, when they get a flu vaccine, very often don't get a good response because their immune system is exhausted and they
Mm.
can't mount a proper immune response to the vaccine to produce the antibodies that they will then need when they come in contact with the pathogen. And this is obviously assuming they got the vaccine right in the whole 9 yards, which again, we're going to leave that out of the picture. What they found in this study is that if they use thymosin alpha-1 as an adjuvant with the vaccine, it enabled their immune system to mount a better immune response so that they ended up with better immunity to the pathogen they were being vaccinated against. So that's
That
like,
makes sense. Yeah.
right? Like it's a really interesting thing. Now, thymosin alpha-1 is a thymus peptide, and it is approved as a drug in about 30 countries, specifically for chronic hep B, hep C, and a third thing that is escaping me at this very minute. Unfortunately, what people in the integrative medicine space have figured out is it is a really, really, look, it's not unfortunate they figured it out, but unfortunately it's not approved for use for anything else, and it can be really helpful for so many other things. It can be helpful during cold and flu season to help people's immune system kind of to stay alert. um, and sometimes if people, I know that I've recorded podcasts with doctors who will talk about, or they used to talk about how thymosin alpha-1 given in higher doses for 4 or 5 days when somebody is coming down with something can really help to overcome the the virus, if you will,
Mhm.
more quickly. The challenge is that these peptides have become so charged with the regulating health authorities that it's becoming really tricky talking about them, recommending them, acquiring them, using them. Even BPC 157, 2 years ago, the FDA in the States decided BPC 157 off the table, which is a crying shame, like just a crying shame, because it helps so many people. And it is so powerful for gut healing, like in Crohn's and colitis, leaky gut, um, ulcers, GERD, like all of these different conditions can benefit from BPC 157. Now, what they banned was the injectable. It seems for now that the oral version of BPC 157 is still okay because they're allowing for the sale of oral supplements with BPC 157. Now, people who are paying attention are going to sit there and say, whoa, 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 wait a minute, Nat. You said earlier that if we ate these things, our bodies would just digest them like a protein. And that is true for many of them. The bioregulators get a pass, just like you said. But BPC 157 also gets a pass because it originates in gastric juice. It is a fragment of a protein that is already produced in our guts. And so it is one of the ones that you can take orally and that will still have its effect in the body. It's, I would say that oral BPC 157 is most beneficial for gut issues, but I can't tell you the number of people I've come across who've used oral BPC 157 and said, I've noticed after 2 weeks, like I have this sore knee and it's stopped hurting, or shoulder, or fill in the blank, or back. And part of it is because once it's done its work, it's going to look for, I mean, I'm anthropomorphizing a peptide, obviously. Once the body, let's say, once the body has checked off the things that are most vital for its survival, it's
Right.
going to be, it's going to, you know, there's then all these other things going on, and sources of inflammation could be next.
Yeah. And I mean, it just makes sense that the body prioritizes the gut because, I mean, everything, well, not, I mean, most things related to chronic health issues, you start with the gut, right?
Yeah.
And working on addressing that. So that's amazing. I love this. And I love that it's accessible to us and available to us. Of course, things can change. I mean, even by the
Mhm.
time this podcast airs, things can change, and hopefully, things are moving in the right direction. I know
Right.
that as somebody who's always kind of critical and skeptical of the way things work, usually if something is taken off the market, it oftentimes works too well, right?
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
should kind of, get us to raise our eyebrows or draw our attention. Like, okay, if they're banning this and there's really no known lethal dose, which I could understand. If people were dropping dead, taking peptides, and I could understand, okay, let's take this stuff off the market. But the things that
Yeah.
are killing people, again, all politics aside, the things that are killing people are still on the market.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. No, it's a bit tragic, honestly. It's, you know, with BPC, you've got something that actually protects the brain,
mhm,
and WADA has it on its list of banned substances. I mean, really? You know, you've
mm,
got football players and soccer players and hockey players who are sustaining brain damage every single day. And this is, I mean, people have been suspended. And frankly, what the reason they're using BPC 157 is because it helps them to recover from their workouts from a
yeah,
musculoskeletal perspective more quickly.
yeah,
And so it's not boosting performance. All it's doing is it's speeding up the healing of tissues that have been damaged during tough workouts. And
right.
and yet it's been yanked. It's literally, you know, the NHL sent a letter out 2 years ago to their players saying, this is no go.
You must get injured. That's
You
what they're
must be
saying.
injured, and it's going to whatever time it takes you to heal, it's just going to take that time. And you know, sorry about your brains, you know, sorry about your
Wow.
life. So
It's quite unfortunate. I think they should start like sports leagues where athletes can take recovery enhancing and performance enhancing uh, drugs because, I mean, why not? Just to see
well,
what the human
I
body's
mean,
capable of.
exactly, because I mean, if you look at steroids have real detriments.
Hmm.
They'll destroy your liver. I mean, they're a big fat problem. Here you have something that doesn't have those downsides, and that it has virtually all upside as far as we can tell. The thing that freaks people out about BPC 157 is that it stimulates VEGF. So by doing so, it stimulates what's called angiogenesis, which is the development of new blood vessels. This is why it's so amazing for healing ligaments and tendons, because those guys really don't have good blood supply. And so if you can give them better blood supply, they will heal faster. And it's one of the mechanisms by which BPC 157 does that. But the problem is people go, oh, wait, angiogenesis? Well, tumors produce factors that create angiogenesis. Isn't this going to cause cancer? So I can't give you the full medical response. I can tell you that we've yet to see a a study, even in animals, that shows that BPC 157 contributes to the growth of tumors. Now, if you had an active cancer, probably it would be smart not to go there. Even then, I've known people in the past who would argue that it actually would be a benefit, along with another thymus peptide called thymosin beta-4. Um, but you know, now we're getting into a much more technical conversation. I wouldn't advise anyone who has cancer to use these compounds, but if you can find a doctor who's familiar with peptides, there might be stuff in that family of compounds that might be helpful.
Yeah. And if it's not BPC 157, it could be thymolin or something like that that
Yeah.
brings
Yeah,
their immune system in balance. Um,
correct.
so you said that the bioregulators are available as a supplement. Uh, is that in Canada and the US, or is that just in the US and certain countries?
So Canada too. I mean, the company that I work with for the oral bioregulators is actually based in the UK. They're in the process of setting up a depot in the US, which it's been months and months. Like those guys are making them jump through flaming hoops. It's hilarious, but you can have them delivered directly to you from the UK from these guys, and we can put that link in the show notes if people are
Sure.
interested in looking into it. And, with the bioregulators, there's 21 oral bioregulators, and you could make an argument for someone over a certain age to start cycling through those bioregulators over the course of a year, and just to essentially as a refresh, right? Think of it as a refresh for the organs and and tissues. And what there's a guy by the name of Dr. Bill Lawrence he was working quite closely with Professor Cavinson until Professor Cavinson sadly passed away last year. But he was doing a study, and he's still working one-on-one with people, where he was putting them through protocols of a year of bioregulators to see, can we affect telomere length, and can we affect biological age? Can we help people get younger as they get older? And the answer on the telomeres was pretty dramatic. Like after even as little as a year, they saw
Mm.
massive reversal of age as as determined by their telomere length. And then on the DNA methylation side, it was taking a little longer, like a year to 2 years, but most people were seeing an improvement in their biological age. Now I'll say most, and the people who were the most resistant to improvement were people who were under unmanaged excessive chronic stress. And I always find that really fascinating, right? Because this brings us to the part of the conversation where, as incredible as these compounds are, as much as they are naturally occurring in the body and they help the body do what it does best, even they cannot overcome some of the lifestyle factors that we must manage in order for these things to be able to help us as much as they can. And how we manage our
Yeah.
stress is a big piece of it.
The state of our stress is such an important switch in the body in determining what it's going to be focusing on, right? Whether it's going to be focusing on repair, regeneration, restoration, digestion, or if it's going to be focusing on breakdown. And
Mm-hmm.
so it only makes sense, right? Even with supplements, we could take all the magnesium we want, but if we're making tons of cortisol and epinephrine and norepinephrine, we're just going to burn through that magnesium instead of using it to help us relax. So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely the nervous system is like the master switch, right? We have to make sure that that's in check. And I know that that's one of the things that really attracted me to your message as well, is that's actually the first thing you spoke about, is that the foundation needs to be in place in order for anything, everything works better, right? Whether it's peptides, bioregulators, drugs, surgery, like whatever it is, it just tends to work more predictably and the outcomes are more favorable if we have a good solid foundation in place. And the people who are listening to this are oftentimes middle age, right? 40 to 60. And that's a
Mm-hmm.
very, significant transitionary period. I always say that if you really start looking at an inflection point in people's health, I mean, there's certainly one in the mid 20s, but then 40s, mid 40s, like if you just let yourself go, it's like hard to get back up again. Uh,
Yeah.
Whereas if you can use this opportunity to really focus on your health, right? Do the mitolux like you're doing, get outside, right? Focus on your nervous system, get sunlight, right? Eat healthy foods, stabilize your blood sugar, like really that foundation. And now they want to go above and beyond. So let's assume people have that strong foundation in place. How would they assess like what peptides or bioregulators are most appropriate for them? Is it based on symptoms? Is it based on labs? Is it based on, what the goals and objectives are? How do you assess, or how would somebody assess what their
Yeah.
needs are?
So again, I'll split it into two. So for the bioregulators, you could say that aging is like natural aging processes could be a reason to use bioregulators and cycle through them kind of on a monthly basis. You could use up to 5 in a month. I don't love stacking. Well, actually, you can use up to 9 in a month. I don't love using more than 3 at any given moment. And the to explain that, the way that so sorry, wait. First, there's the I'm fine. Everything's fine. I just want to kind of give my body the signals for a bit of a refresh and a reboot.
Mm.
So you might use a bioregulator, each bioregulator for 10 days a month, right? So you might do 3 for day 1 to 10, another 3 for day 11 to 20, and another 3 for day 21 to 30. If you have an imbalance, so let's say you're struggling with blood sugar stabilization. So yes, we have to do all the other things we know that we need to do. But at the same time, we can also say that the pancreas starts to kind of get exhausted, right? It's been working really, really hard for us. So what I would say in that sense is I'm going to look at what's the collection of organs here? What's the axis that I'm trying to help? And very often in a situation like this, I'm like, well, the liver is playing a role, right? The pancreas is playing a role, and the stomach, we're talking about the digestive system. Very often our stomach is not making enough digestive enzymes for us simply because of stress, age, like fill in the blank, all of the things. And so I might recommend to that person that for 30 days, they use those 3 bioregulators together to help to give that signal to the digestive system to kind of come back and restore that balance. At the same time, we might use digestive enzymes because it's going to take a while for the stomach to reboot its digestive enzyme production, and it may or may not come fully back online. The pancreas bioregulator is not going to cure type 1 diabetes. Just putting it out there right now. It sounds really fascinating, but it's not going to do that. Is it going to help someone whose blood sugar is all over the map? It might be helpful. I
Mm.
have seen the liver bioregulator implemented with all the other things we know we need to do help to bring liver enzymes back into balance. So definitely they can be used as an adjunct to all the other things, and we can focus on certain bioregulators when we're working on a specific system. So that's on the bioregulator side. On the signaling peptide side, the longer peptides, now we want to ask the question, what's our goal? What are we trying to achieve? So there's a repair stack, which is BPC 157, thymosin beta 4. A lot of people would include another peptide called GHK copper in there, which is when it originally came out, people were talking about it mostly for skin. But now we know that it is a very important signaling molecule for wound healing, healing of the gut, reducing scarring. It upregulates the production of collagen and elastin. And it actually, GHK is produced in massive quantities in our system and is present in every fluid in our body when we're young. And by the time we hit 60, those levels have tanked. So GHK copper is a peptide that is really gaining popularity as a repair peptide, along with the BPC 157 and the thymosin beta 4. And then there's another. So is anybody feeling like they're drinking out of a fire hose yet? Sorry.
I'm taking notes feverishly.
Okay, so in that repair stack, people will often include a category of peptides called growth hormone secretagogues. And here's where we're going to talk about a category of peptides that can really turn around and bite you if you go too far, right? What these peptides are doing is they're stimulating your own production of growth hormone. Now, we know that as we age, our growth hormone production starts to tank. If we're not sleeping properly, our growth hormone production starts to tank. If we're too stressed, we're therefore not sleeping and we don't make as much growth hormone when we age, when we're sleeping. And so growth hormone as we age is part of what allows us to repair and recover and maintain youthfulness. It helps to, these growth hormone secretagogues also help to favor muscle building over fat. They're also helpful for sleep. But too much of a good thing in this case, at the very least, will drive water retention and joint pain. Just these symptoms of excess growth hormone. So used in excess or used if you don't need it, you're going to see people feeling worse than better. And then, of course, with boosting growth hormone, we always have a concern if there's any kind of, cancer, tumor, pathology going on, that it would accelerate. Growth hormone is it's kind of like as much as antibiotics will nuke everything in your gut, growth hormone will grow everything in your body. So we want to be mindful with growth hormone. But going back to our repair stack, when we have an injury and we're trying to speed up the healing of that injury, we can put together that BPC 157 with the thymosin beta-4, they kind of go together like peanut butter and jelly, with the GHK and the growth hormone secretagogues. The cool thing that a lot of people don't talk about is one of the things that BPC 157 does is it upregulates the expression of growth hormone receptors. And so imagine that all of a sudden now on your little cells, you've got these little catcher's mitts that have popped up waiting for growth hormone to come along, and you've increased your production of growth hormone while you're trying to heal so that there's more growth hormone around. So it's a very elegant way to help the body to speed up healing. So people will, when they have an injury, use a stack like that. There are people who work out really hard at the gym, and bodybuilders are part of this category. They've been using BPC 157 for bajillions, for decades. They will tell you, we are the original biohackers. And honestly, I think they are, because these are people that will stop at nothing, right?
Oh yeah.
To influence the way their bodies are acting. But they can help not only heal injury, but they can help people to recover faster between workouts. So if you're in a training phase where you're pushing really hard to build, that repair stack is something that people will often turn to. I would say that with the peptide, these peptides, you want to use them in cycles. So you might use it for 8 to 12 weeks, and then you're going to step away and take a break. And then you might go back to it.
Okay. So I'm going to stick my neck out here. And I guess I don't want to put you on the spot to advise me on what to take. That wouldn't be the right thing to do. But I'm curious, like if let's just talk about someone who is 47, eats healthy, does a lot of things right, and is looking for, better recovery, performance enhancement, and maintaining good cognitive function and drive, let's call it. Where would that person start? So that's like a lot of my clients. Like
Yeah.
they take really good care of themselves, eat healthy, and now they're looking, okay, what's next? What else can I do? What would be a starting point for them? Would there just
Yeah. So that repair stack would be a good place to,
okay?
to do like a 2 to 3 month cycle of those, even though you're not allowed to do those, but let's just say, right? And then
And repeat those again.
so it was the BPC 157, thymosin beta-4, GHK, and then the growth hormone secretagogues. For the growth hormone secretagogues, I would have people check their IGF-1 levels. IGF-1 is the best, it's not perfect, but it's the best analog we have of people's growth hormone levels. If your IGF-1 is high, you don't need the growth hormone secretagogue. Okay.
Okay.
The other, growth hormone secretagogues are growth hormone secretion is impaired by insulin. So that means that when we use our growth hormone secretagogue, we need to be fasted. And because they facilitate sleep, they are often used at bedtime. Now, I would also be remiss if I didn't say that most of the allergic reactions I see to peptides happen to growth hormone secretagogues and then thymosin beta-4 in second place. You can have a histamine or allergic reaction to these things even after you've been using them for a month or two. Your immune system can decide, actually, no. And so just be aware that even though these are technically natural compounds to the body, they're still synthetic, and the body can still decide that it's not okay.
Okay.
The growth hormone secretagogues, for people who can use them, also have cognitive benefits. BPC 157 technically has cognitive benefits. BPC and TB4 also can help with nerves, healing of nerves. Like it is shocking, the laundry list of different systems and tissues in the body that are positively affected by these compounds.
And it makes sense, right? If we look at our body as an intelligent design, it'd be silly, if you're designing an automobile, right? The more times you can use the same screw, the less manufacturing processes you have to create to build that screw. And you just put it in as many places as you can, because then it's easier to repair, it's easier to work on, right?
Yeah.
And the screw isn't so novel, it's readily available. So it makes sense that the body would function that way. And I just believe that it makes sense because healing can be really simple, right?
Mhm.
Even though we're adding a new layer to what's possible for people. We're giving them more of what their body makes,
Yeah,
something that declines as we age, right? And it's something that the body is hungry for in many cases, and can be very safe and very beneficial for people. Now,
100%. And with the person who's trying to get stronger at the gym kind of thing. So now we also want to look at, well, they should probably be taking creatine. We should be maybe using essential amino acids either pre or post workout to make sure the body has those building blocks to do that repair that we're stimulating. So you want
mhm,
to think about it kind of full circle, right? I'm providing stimulus and flipping switches. I want to make sure my body has everything it needs to do the work at the same.
right. It's like flipping on a light switch, but the bulb doesn't work.
Right. Exactly. If you don't have a bulb, not going to happen. The other thing we want to pay attention to is inflammation, right? So if the body's on fire, it's going to be hard for things to really work. There are peptides for inflammation. BPC 157 is one of them. There's another tiny one called KPV. That's a very effective anti-inflammatory. And I'm going to get back to your brain question in a minute. The brain peptides are not my particular specialty, if you were, but there are a few peptides that help with cognition. They're not always the first place I go. I think of peptides for cognition when people have a really serious issue.
Mhm.
But there are two peptides, one called Cmax, the other one called Selank, that people will use. One of them's anxiolytic, the other one, like people will use them, and here's the interesting thing about these peptides. If you need them, you will feel them. And if you
Mhm.
don't, you won't. Right? So Cmax and Selank are used in Russia. I think both, maybe just one though, are used in Russia to treat people who've had strokes. There's another compound called cerebral lysine, which is actually an extract from pigs' brains that is filled with neuropeptides and peptides, and that is used therapeutically in countries like Russia. And you could until not too long ago, you could get it, but it's been pretty much banished in North America. But for cognition, I would also look at there's a brain bioregulator, and the blood vessel bioregulator is really important. Now, why blood vessel? Because if we can improve the state of our circulatory system, and one of the things the blood vessel bioregulator does is it helps to restore function to the endothelium of blood vessels. If we're helping blood flow to the brain, we're going to help with cognition automatically.
Right.
Um, I'm trying to think of the other brain, and there's a central nervous system bioregulator as well. On the peptide front, there's the Cmax, the C-length, the cerebral lysine. Oh, there's dihexa. Dihexa is referred to as miracle grow for the brain because it helps to facilitate the growth of new neurons. The trick to dihexa is most of the physicians I know who recommend it to their patients will recommend it and recommend to their patients that they learn a new skill while they're using it. And this is because the brain very much works on the principle, and the whole body really does, right? I'm not going to build something unless I need it. And so if you're providing an impetus for growth, then especially in the brain, start building new neural pathways that you want to lay down by learning a new skill, learning a new language, learning to play an instrument, whatever it is, so that you're making use of this peptide that is a stimulus at the same time.
Okay. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Not just creating the stimulus, but laying down the tracks, right?
Yeah.
Amazing. What one peptide that's gained a ton of popularity, and you've probably spoken about it a million times, is GLP-1.
Mm-hmm.
And, I know there's the medication dosages of GLP-1, and then there's the, compounded doses of GLP-1. I know our body makes GLP-1. I'm sure you get this question ad nauseum. So I'm curious what your thoughts are, and if that's something that you encourage people to explore, or if there's better ways to create your own GLP-1 peptides.
So, yeah, I mean, it's a great question. So here's the thing. You do create your own GLP-1, but it's gone in an instant, right?
Mhm.
So in a perfect world, you only need it for an instant. Having said that, in our dysregulated world, people need the effects of GLP-1. It can benefit from effects of GLP-1 that last longer. And that's essentially what the pharma companies who develop these medications, there's two of them on the market right now. There's a third and a fourth coming down the pipes. And each iteration is an improvement on the last. So the first one that came out is called the compound name is called semaglutide. The drug name is Ozempic. The next one that came out is tirzepatide, which is called Mounjaro. Sorry, I just got hiccups. Excuse me. What essentially the pharma company did is they figured out a way to extend the half-life of the GLP-1 from like seconds or minutes to days. So that GLP-1 stays active in your body for 6 days, 6 to 7 days. And over times of use, that the levels build up to a therapeutic level. So people are living in two camps. On the one camp, this can solve many problems for humanity. And in the other camp, it's cheating, you're going to die, look at all the side effects, blah, blah, blah. So neither camp is right and neither camp is wrong. I would say that these compounds used properly can be really, really helpful. The problem is that whenever we find something that even remotely resembles a silver bullet, we're like little kids. We are sitting there playing with our toys and we love our toys, and there's a new toy and we're like, throw that away and go to that one because that's the new toy. It turns out that if you kept all the other toys and this toy, you would have a much better situation on your hands. So the mistakes that people make with GLP-1s is very often they dose them too high too fast. They think if some is good, then more is going to be better. And you can get into real trouble that way. They will they will suppress your appetite. And so people stop eating. In some cases, people need to stop eating. You and I both know the value of fasting, right?
Right.
Challenge is that if you stop eating, and maybe we'll talk about some of the mechanisms of action by which they achieve what they achieve, and they're very pleiotropic, similarly to BPC 157. But if you stop eating completely, but what happens is if you stop eating and you notice that you can lose weight and still eat donuts, there's few too many of us on this planet, particularly in North America, who would be perfectly happy to eat donuts and nothing else and still lose weight. We're like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is actually magic. Here's the bad news. You're going to end up skinny, malnourished. You will have wasted away your muscle. And the day you come off those things, you're in big trouble. So here are some of the ways that the GLP-1s work and why they're so beneficial. And then I'm going to follow it up with an invitation, if you're going to use these things, of how you want to use them. And we'll do this pretty quickly. So number one, they affect the reward center in the brain. So they can calm cravings. And it's one of the reasons why they're being researched for people with addictions like alcoholism and smoking, because people don't want stuff as badly. For people who have food addictions, one of the things they'll say to you is, the food noise is gone. I've stopped I'm no longer eating breakfast thinking about what I'm going to have for snack, and then eating snack thinking about what I'm going to have for lunch. I care less about food. So it is kind of a mild form of anhedonia, if you will, in that you no longer get as much pleasure from food. So you don't eat food just for the sake of eating food. The second thing that's happening is it's slowing down your digestion. So it slows down gastric emptying. So that means your stomach, when you eat, is not going to just empty at the same time. You're going to get fuller faster, and you're going to stay fuller longer. So you can't eat as much if your stomach's getting full. The problem is that it also slows transit time through the gut. And so particularly in the case of Ozempic, the first drug that came out, this can really cause big problems with a couple of things. One is with heartburn, because as the food sits in the stomach, it can ferment and you can kind of get that reflux, and it can cause constipation. And because most people start out being constipated to begin with, it can really exacerbate constipation. And then taking it to the worst level, there have been cases of people suffering from gastroparesis. And unfortunately, gastroparesis, which is a like almost like paralysis of the stomach is not reversible.
Hmm.
So that doesn't happen often, but it does happen, right? So it's a black box warning on these compounds. So they are not a get out of jail free card. There's also a higher risk of pancreatitis. There's been a lawsuit about people who wake up blind in the morning. Again, tiny numbers, but if you're one of those tiny numbers, it's not tiny. It's you. It's
Right.
100%, right? So going back to what's happening, so you've got a slowing down of the digestive tract, you stay fuller longer. You're also the good news on the good side, your pancreas becomes more efficient at creating insulin in response to glucose.
Hmm.
And it helps to reactivate your cellular uptake of glucose, particularly at skeletal muscle and the heart. So it kind of reduces insulin resistance. It reestablishes insulin sensitivity. It also works on the brain, which is also why they're being researched for treating people with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, well, particularly Alzheimer's, which has been referred to as type 3 diabetes. So you've
Right.
got all these different things going on. So the invitation, if you decide that this is right for you, and if you're working with a physician or a practitioner who's going to guide you through this, the invitation is take this opportunity when you don't have all the crazy cravings to re-educate your palate. Take this education to reintroduce yourself to natural whole foods. Prioritize protein because when you stop eating protein, also, if you're not exercising, your muscles are going to waste away, right?
Yeah.
We want
And
to
you need protein to make to provide the amino acids, right? To
correct.
make your own peptides.
Correct. So you want to eat protein first. You need those healthy fats. And then you need nutrient dense, energy poor foods, otherwise referred to as vegetables, particularly the ones that grow above ground, right? So we want to make sure that we're nourished even though we're not going to have that much appetite. So have a salad with your protein, whatever it is that you choose to eat, and a little bit of healthy fat. And you won't
Amazing.
be eating great big meals, but make every bite count.
Yeah. Chew your food, right? Go back to the basics.
A hundred
Nathalie, we're
percent.
going to have to do a part two.
Yes, sorry.
There's so much we can talk about and so much that you've shared and unpacked for us. What I'd love to do is have you share how can people learn more about your work. We'll put some links in the show notes where people can connect with you certainly, and where
Mhm.
they can get some of the peptides through your links that you have to offer. Because yeah, this is a very fascinating topic, and you've spent years researching this, and of course, there's only so much you can cover in an hour and 15 minutes
Yeah.
or so. So I want people to continue down this path if they want to learn more and connect with your work. So maybe you can share with us how we can do that.
Sure. So, well, there's the podcast, Longevity with Nathalie Niddam. I've done a number of episodes and I'm continually interviewing experts in these areas. Particularly GLP-1s are so hot right now.
Mhm.
I have a membership community, which you can learn about on my website, natniddam.com. There's a membership community at the top. You can sign up for my newsletter. And then for people who want to learn about peptides, in the membership community, I also have a course. So there's a peptide course, but it's a very introductory course that people can buy. There's also an app called peptidepro.app. It's actually a web-based app because you can't have a peptide app in the Apple Store because of the regulations. So peptidepro.app. What's really what I love about this app is it's like a peptide encyclopedia. So people can really educate themselves about all the different compounds. They give some starting protocols for things that like you asked for earlier. There's all kinds of amazing features. If you use Nathalie 50, Nathalie 50, not only will you get 50% off, but then you get my list of resources along with the app at the same time. So, and then Instagram at Nathalie Niddam.
Amazing. Thank you. I'll be sure to put all that in the notes. Once again, thank you so much for your time today. And
Thank you.
yeah, let's plan a part two in the near future. And certainly these resources are a fantastic place for people to get started.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, Sachin. It was great.
My pleasure.